Thursday, May 26th, Town Board of Webster Workshop. We have three agenda items tonight. The first is a public hearing to consider the transfer of land that is considered parkland at 1640 Bolter Industrial Parkway to the Webster Central School District. Charlie, I think this is the parking lot of Yankee Stadium?
This is the parking lot. It's 2.675 acres. It adjoins what used to be called Yankee Stadium, Bolter Industrial Park. That's correct.
And I am going to open the public hearing now. Would anybody like to get up on the podium to talk about this transfer? I didn't think so. Really?
Oh,
Really?
there you go.
Well, am I glad I didn't bet you, John, a steak lunch or...
62 Park Avenue in the Village of Webster, Executive Director of the Webster Economic Development Alliance. So is this the parcel to the east of the stadium? Or is this to the south of the stadium?
The south
South.
piece.
It's the south.
It's a finger that didn't get transferred before.
Because there's an area that, how much of a finger? I've been talking about reserving some of this potential area as a right-of-way to connect over to Salt Road as an extension of Mitchell Dean, for an extension of Bolter Industrial Parkway west to Salt. We're currently working with Xerox towards the development of a right-of-way across their lands that would connect up with this piece of property. So it would actually be a public corridor, and I can affirm that most of the industrial users on Basket Road would love to see a public roadway extend west to Salt. So with that,
This is a parking lot.
oh, I know, but is there a map that can be pulled up so you can actually see it?
I don't have,
Okay.
no, because
Well,
this has been before the board numerous times.
Yeah, I wanted to throw a grenade on this meeting, so that's why I stood up.
Good job.
Matt, I can tell you this, I don't want to, well, a housekeeping item in a lot of ways because, and don't quote me on the exact acreage, but the town sold the stadium and the parking lot to the school. It's an aggregate of about 9 acres. Well, the legislative process for parkland alienation, just through a clerical error, ended up being 7 acres when it happened a couple years ago. And we are holding money in escrow for the rest of the property, which is the parking lot, as we go to the state legislator in this session to get the 2 acres on the parking lot done.
Perfect. Okay. Well, great. I
All
brought
right.
up my point.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Would anybody else? And I'm kind of glad Matt got up there because that's Matt Chatfield. Well, then I am going to close out this public hearing unless the board or anybody else has any comments on this. Well, we did not have the shortest public hearing of all time, did we? Our next agenda item tonight, and we are not going to short you.
I think we have to do.
Don't you want to do
resolution.
a resolution?
Well, I guess we do. See,
Yes, we
Matt?
do.
I mean, Matt threw me off.
Is there any discussion with the board, Mr. Supervisor?
I have no comments, because as the supervisor said, this is a housekeeping issue. It
Okay.
was something that was inadvertently left off from the previous transactions that happened.
Okay. Well, then I am making a motion of the Webster Town Board approving transfer of a parcel of land designated as parkland within the town of Webster to the Webster Central School District.
Second.
Supervisor Flaherty?
Aye?
Councilwoman Wynn?
Aye.
Councilman Cahill?
Aye.
Councilwoman Cataldi?
Aye.
Councilman Abbott?
Aye.
Okay, and Dolly obviously is the town clerk, all of the tax ID numbers, and it actually is 2.67 acres. I said, don't quote me on the 2 acres. So that is all tightened up, and in a nice package can go to the state assembly and state senate, so the legislative process can be carried out on that. Sorry about that, Charlie. A little brain, you know. Okay, well, our next agenda item, and I promise you, Adam, you didn't get shorted 4 minutes on this, okay? But we have a presentation and discussion by Adam Traub, who is I don't know if we can call him the new library director anymore, right? He's 5 months in.
Yeah, you tried.
Honeymoon is way over, right?
You tried to carry that forward for at least a
Well,
year.
that's, I mean, do as I say, not as I
Yeah,
do. But Adam is going to do a presentation on the Webster Public Library and how it compares to its local peers. So, Adam Traub, the baton is yours.
Right on. Thank you, Tom, for the invitation to speak, to the town board for your time and attention tonight, everyone here. And of course, Jenny, our town board liaison, for her support of the library. Very much appreciated. So I wanted to share with you all maybe some things about the Webster Public Library that maybe you already know, and maybe you might find surprising. So I want to start off by setting a little context. First of all, the Webster Public Library was founded in 1929. For anybody checking the math, that means our centennial anniversary is in 7 years. We are a municipal public library, one of the 3 types of public libraries in New York State. We have a budget of about $2.2 million, which is allocated primarily by the town. That equates, in case you're wondering, to about 73 cents per $1,000 of assessed value. And for the average home in Webster, that's less than a Netflix subscription. However, our budget is also supplemented by 2 nonprofit organizations. The Friends of the Webster Public Library is a 501c3 that's made up of volunteers who support the library through things like their lobby sale, the book sale that they had earlier this month, and provide us with about $50,000. I think last year it was a little over $50,000 of support, which equates to about 2% of our annual budget. Similarly, the foundation of the Webster Public Library is another separate 501c3, which started in 2010 from bequests of individuals in Webster who love and wanted to support their library through their legacy. The foundation provides annual project-based funding throughout the year, which supports things like online resources, Wi-Fi hotspot lending, and building upgrades. They supply us with around $23,000 per year, or 1% of our annual budget. We are an independent member of the Monroe County Library System. You may have one of our library cards in your wallet now. The whole slogan there is "One County, One Card." That means your card that works here in Webster works at any other public library in the county. That benefits us in an innumerable amount of ways, but I will try to just do some of the highlights. First of all, our internet is provided at a 90% discount, managed by the Monroe County Library System using the E-rate program. On top of that, we have a consolidated public library catalog. So if you go online to our website, you do a search for your favorite author, your favorite book, you can see not only if Webster has it, but also any other library in the county. Speaking of, we've got trucks that deliver those books from those other libraries to the most convenient location. Hopefully that's us across the street, 5 days a week. And those books can be returned at any library that's convenient to you, and they will find their way back home. So essentially we have, even though it's not completely shared property, it's a shared collection among those 20 member libraries that we can benefit from. Now, we have about 45,000 square feet across the road here in the Webster Plaza next to Savers. We have about 64 employees, which changes based on the season. And we have about 211,000 holdings. And holdings is library lingo for all the cool stuff that we have. Our books, our DVDs, our GoPros, our hotspots, things like that. About 50% of that is physical books, what you would actually recognize as like a library thing. 38% of that is online resources. About 12% falls into this other category. That could be a hotspot, a video game, things of that nature. Since January 1st, we've had 12,386 visits on average per month. That, to kind of set the context of where we are after the pandemic started, we're at about 60% of our high figures that we saw in 2019. 2019, we saw record levels of visits, and we're about 60% of that right now. On the right-hand side of this slide, you can see our library board. Our library board is in charge of the governance of the library, as well as the director selection and evaluation, and you can see them up there on the slide. We are a public library, so our meetings are open to our board meetings are open to the public, and we, value the public's input at those. Now, enough about us specifically. I wanted to give a little bit more context about how Webster Public Library kind of compares to our peers. So we are what's considered a large public library in Monroe County. That means we're a library serving over 30,000 residents. I will make a note, I'm excluding Rochester Public Library from this comparison. And the reason being is that an urban public library has a very different place in the community than a large town library. So they're excluded primarily so that we're getting an apples to apples comparison. To give you an idea, Rochester Public Library serves in the 250,000 range. The sources for this data are the 2020 census, the New York State Department of Library Development service areas, as well as the 2020 annual report. Now, you may be wondering, why are you using the 2020 annual report instead of 2021? That's because the state library hasn't published those figures yet. So I'm using the most recent, validated data that we have. So with that, our peers are Greece, Arundecoit, Henrietta, Webster, Fairport, Brighton, Penfield, and, as of 2020, Pittsford, as they just went over the 30,000 mark. So now that I've given you kind of some of that context, I really want to focus on some of the statistics that can show you how we're doing or where Webster lies right now. So again, the population of the service area, this is what designates us as a large library. But it also sets some of the context. You can see, obviously, Greece is a large suburban library and much larger than some of our peers. But again, it is a suburb of Rochester. It's not a large urban library in the same way. So you can see we've got Greece, Arundecoit, Henrietta, Webster, Fairport, Penfield, Brighton, Pittsford, set in descending order. Just as a note, all of the following slides will be in that order. Greece will always be on the far left, Pittsford will be always on the far right, and there we are, Webster in the middle. And the reason that this is important is that the population of the service area not only illustrates the community we serve, but it also directly relates, of course, to our tax base, yes, but also state aid that we receive every year, but also costs for various services like online resources. Frequently, online resource vendors will say, what's the population of your service area, and charge based on a per capita basis. So one area where Webster is going above is that we have a lot of space in the plaza across the street. So you can see here, again, in the same order as before, on the left you'll see a purple bar. That is the absolute square footage of these individual libraries, and the axis for that is on the left. What you'll see next is a dark gray bar to the right of that. That is a per capita number of how much square footage per capita each of these libraries has. And across the middle, there's a light purple line. That light purple line is a per capita average for each of those peers so that we can accommodate for varying community sizes. So again, you can see we do have a lot of space in both absolute number and a per capita analysis. So I mention that because I'm trying to maybe set a level here. And so I want to move on to our operating expenditures. Our operating expenditures, on the other hand, Webster is right in the middle. Not only is our operating budget of about $2.2 million hitting right around average, but so is our per capita investment in that library. You can see here again kind of where our peers lie in terms of their operating budgets. And I will make a note, this was 2020. As a result, there were significant changes to most libraries to their various budgets, but that's true for every library in this sample. So again, you see that light purple line setting the per capita average, and there's Webster hitting just above the average there. Moving on, I think it would be fair to zoom into that and say, well, salaries and wages are often a significant investment of any organization. So how do we square up when it comes to our salaries and wages? Again, Webster is right around average. We're just below that per capita average line, as you can see here. And with most service-based organizations, this is a good proportion of our budget. And without it, the library would be an expensive warehouse. That said, we are right around the middle. And I will note that while salaries are the largest proportion of all of these libraries' budgets, Webster ranks second to last on our budget of 67% of our budget compared to the average of 76%. Now, I'm going to show you one area where Webster's maybe not doing so great. This is our collections budget. I think I mentioned holdings earlier. Collections, again, is the library stuff. These are the books, these are the online resources, these are the materials that people come in to borrow. So you can see again on the left, we've got our absolute dollar figure. In 2020, Webster slashed its collections budget to about $52,000. I would say that one thing that to note here is that you may see that dark gray dot above our bars. That represents what it will be in 2021 when the figures are validated. Furthermore, that $100,000 mark is about where Webster has been and will be. So 2020 was an outlier, but even if we adjust for that and assume the $102,000 level of 2021, we are still well below average compared to our peers. Our peers are spending a little north of $4 per capita, per resident, and we are down almost just above $1, or if you adjust for that, we'll probably be in the $2 range. So we're spending half of what our peer libraries are in terms of the investment of the collections. And here's where a lot of that budgetary spend is going. Here you see the building and maintenance expenditures for all of the libraries that I've included here. This represents our rent that we pay to the Plaza, as well as the common area maintenance charges for things like snow plowing that the Plaza pays, as well as taxes that we have to pay, which is an unusual thing for a public library to have to pay. But we do rent, we don't own the building. And I want to note, there's one other library here that stands out with us, that's well above average. That's the Irondequoit Public Library. That's because in 2015, the Irondequoit Public Library built a new library and they went out to bond. So this represents their expenditure about 5 years in to paying off that bond. So again, we're spending an incredible amount of money on a space that the town does not have, much control over. Now, I would say that there's another dark gray dot, and I'm including that kind of in the interest of, full disclosure. Henrietta opened a brand new library in 2020 and will started paying off their bond in 2021. That gray dot represents where they will be in year one of paying off their bond for their brand new library. So again, I point this out only to show where we're sitting in terms of our peers. One note that I'd like to make is that the only other library on this slide that rents is the Fairport Public Library. And you can see that they're right around average in terms of their per capita cost for their building and maintenance expenditures. So it's, in terms of similarities there, they're not too far from us. They're also renting, but they're also not spending nearly as much as we are in terms of our building and maintenance. And again, Irondequoit and Henrietta own those buildings, and those costs will go down over time. You can see with Pittsford, the expenditure is almost zero because that is part of their town campus and a town-owned building. Now, I talked a lot about expenditures, and I think it would be a fair question of me to bring up our revenue, and I'm going to use that term in air quotes. Fines are traditionally the way that the library brings income in. As you can see here, of course, in 2020, there was a dramatic decrease. That's not a surprise. But what may surprise you is that in 2010, you can see we're right under, and I should say that this is a bar chart of all the libraries I've been comparing across the past 10 years. Fines not only in Webster, fine revenue not only in Webster, not only in Monroe County, but nationwide have been declining naturally. So this revenue stream, for lack of a better word, has been naturally declining over time. And I will note, this is before any of these libraries have adopted any sort of fine-free policies. So all of these libraries were charging fines on library materials, and still that revenue continued to go down. And as I mentioned, this is a nationwide trend, so it's not something that we can magically snap our fingers and suddenly kind of bounce back in terms of revenue. So I just have a little bit more time with you, and I wanted to share some interesting results of a recent survey. The Monroe County Library System did a community-wide survey last year as part of their strategic planning. They asked residents, both library users and non-users, many questions about libraries. The responses I'm sharing are only either Webster Library users who could live in other areas but prefer to use the Webster Library, or Webster residents who do not use the library. So first of all, our Net Promoter Score is 65. If you're thinking of a GPA, 65 doesn't sound so good, but Net Promoter Score is a scale out of a -100 to 100. And many commercial organizations shoot for the 60 to 70 range. So I think we're doing really well there. And what was really buoying as a library professional was 94% of those respondents in Webster believe that the library is worthy of tax support. And you may think, well, sure, somebody who takes the time to answer a library survey, of course they're going to support the library. But there's an interesting caveat here. 74% of the people who responded, who said they are not library users, either agreed or strongly agreed with that same statement. So a significant portion of people who don't use the library, some of which I'll get into in a second, still believe that library is worthy of that support. 94% of people believe that the staff and volunteers are friendly and helpful, and I think that is a show that we're giving a positive experience when people come through our doors. And one of the biggest narrative comments that came through is the availability of collections and materials through the Monroe County Library System, reducing our wait times and effectively expanding our collections even if we don't own the stuff. Now, areas that we could do better, library users primarily want two things. They want expanded hours and they want expanded collections. They want more print books, more ebooks. And it is a common refrain at the desk that, I'm sorry, you're going to have to be on the wait list, you're so far down, et cetera, et cetera. And again, I think that harkens back to the current investment level of the collections. Non-library users don't use the library because of three things. They forget to think of the library as number one. Number two, they say that the hours aren't convenient, again, speaking to the expanded hours that library users want. And there are a handful of people who say, I just prefer to purchase. And for many of those people, we actually benefit from their secondhand, gently used books, which donate to the Friends, and then we can use that revenue to help supplement our budget. So I think I've gone just slightly over my time, so I want to thank you all for your attention, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Well, thanks, Adam.
What's the square footage? I'm looking at the page for building maintenance and expenditures, and the two libraries that rent are rent spaces, Webster and Fairport, and typically the cost is per square foot. So we have 45,000 square feet. What is Fairport's square footage? Because their rent is obviously significantly lower than ours, so.
Yeah, their square footage is 24,700 with an annual cost of about $3 a square foot. Our annual cost of is about $9.70 a square foot.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Adam, how much is Fairport's per square foot?
About $3.
That's all inclusive, taxes, common area, fund, costs and everything?
They're all their building and maintenance expenditures off that.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, anyway, thank you, Adam, for a very thorough presentation, and thank you for all the boards that being here today. It's mean a lot to see all of you here to support Adams and everything. And as a liaison for the library, also I would like to give my 2 cents worth. In my profession, leasing is never a good idea to me. It is not a good investment for our community and for the future of our library. So therefore, I noticed the rent that we are paying currently is $24.27, and the CAM is $8,977.13, and the taxes is $7,426.85. So the total monthly is $38,428.25. And the total for the year that we've been paying for this area that we are renting is $461,499. That's an extraordinary, significant expense that we have to pay And we could have used that money toward, a building that we own, the town owns, so we can save taxes, and we can save a lot of things, and, the profit, whatever we have, we can put toward the programs for the children or for the adults. Because the library is a great resource for people to come every day, and it doesn't discriminate, who you are, and everyone can benefit from it. And, my granddaughter loved the library, I enjoy the library, and I know a lot of people here enjoy the libraries and everything, so that is my input, because I'm new to this board, so, and I'm still learning, but to me, this is significant, and it shouldn't have been that kind of money to go toward the building, renting out in the first place, so.
Patty?
I think Ginny summed up what is fairly clear. It's where we go from here. I know we have a lease that we're bound to for a certain amount of time. I don't know when that lease is up.
It's 11 more years, right?
It's up
No.
March 31st, 2032.
20
So
what?
we've got just over nine and a half years.
Yeah.
Yep. Over
Is
the
it-
life of the lease, we're paying about 6.5 million on rent, taxes, and common area charges.
Did anyone look into it to see if we can
Yes.
try to do something?
Yes, we have.
I
Extensive.
believe there's been a lot
Councilman
of work on
Cahill
that
can
front.
answer that definitively.
Yes.
Yeah,
And we've had many, many discussions with respect to the rent and where do we go from here. And I know, Tom, you've had
Yeah.
conversations with the previous owner. Has he sold that plaza yet?
well, depending on who you to talk to, I had heard through the grapevine that they may have a offer in principle, and that they're looking to fast track a closing in the third quarter of this year, somewhere in the July, August, September. I have not heard that from the current owner, and the current owner did let me know that they were putting it up for sale back a couple of months ago, so
Right.
I guess I'll wait for that. I will say one thing that, and I don't disagree with Ginny at all, because I guess I come from a family, we always owned property. I remember when I rented for my business, it was just so foreign to me to do that, but that's another story. What the situation was 10 to 20 years ago when the town initially entered into this lease, I wasn't at the table. I really haven't studied the economics. That might have been a good decision back then. Hindsight is very easy to look back and say, as we sit here in, May of 2022, it's not a good 9+ years left on that lease. Charlie, I know you've been involved in this. Paul Adams, Councilman Cahill, I'm telling you, the guy should be a private investigator. I mean, in the last 2 years, we really dissected that lease, and have tried to see ways that we could get relief from it. And we haven't found any.
Well,
It's a contract.
It was a graduated
Yep.
payment, and I think it started at $3 a square foot, I believe. It was a good deal at the time, and the town did not have to bond building.
Yep.
Or at least bond very much to build out what was the library back in 2000.
Yep. Bill? No?
Nothing.
Adam? I'm gonna have you back, because you're a good presenter, my friend.
No,
really are.
I want to thank you for a very
Yeah.
thorough presentation, Adam. It was great.
Thank you, everyone, appreciate it.
Yes.
All right, well, next up tonight is, and the last item on the agenda, is a presentation and update on the 2020 through 2020 Green Space Project, if you want to call it that, and Chris Bilo, our Parks and Rec.
Thank you for the time. I will try to keep as on schedule as as was allotted. Basically, what we're going to go through, and what I'll go through this evening, is just kind of an update as to really kind of the past 11 months as it relates to open space and kind of some of the things that have occurred over those 11 months between meetings, contact with potential landowners, et cetera. So in order to start, sure this works, there we go. In order to start, I'll give a little bit of, just from a historical standpoint, kind of where we are from a population growth in the past 30 years, and kind of show how that's kind of played out in regards to growth. So back in 1990, population was just under 32,000. That obviously saw tremendous growth in the next 10 years, where it ballooned up to just over 38,000, so about a 20% growth. Then it's slowly has started to, I'll say, decrease, although it's still showing obviously increase. So between 2000 and 2010, about a 12% growth, again in population, up to just over 42,500. It was in that time, in 2005, halfway through that period or that cycle, that the open space referendum for the town was passed, $5.9 million. That bond will come due and be paid off. I believe it's in the middle of 2025 is when that period will, or that bond will actually be paid off for that period. Then the final chart piece there on the chart is the last 10 years between 2010 through 2022 or 20. Population now around 45,500. So again, showing still having a growth in population, but obviously not seeing that significant spike that was early in the 2000s, again, coincided with that original open space referendum. This is a map that's, I think there's one in here in the back wall. It's also on the town website. This is now up to date. We actually, Karen has uploaded this to the town website today. This is as current as today. The total amount of acreage that is within Webster that is dedicated as preserved lands. And then you can see in the chart on the key, the different classifications for the various properties. But it totals out to be around 2,914 acres. There's a number of ways that obviously breaks down as you look at this map, different colors. From a town standpoint, the blue areas, which are town-owned parkland and open space, just over 1,100 acres. That breaks down from a park standpoint. There's actually 9 town parks. There's a lot of discussion on parks, parkland, park districts, et cetera. But from a designation standpoint, there's actually 9 town parks. We have 3 preserves within Webster, between Whiting, Gosnell, 4 Mile Creek. And then from a park district standpoint, which are in this map shaded in red, there's around 134 park districts that are within Webster. So again, and then obviously it shows the county land, the tax incentive, purchase, development rights, et cetera. So that's all indicated on this map. And again, this is up to date. The last major change to this was in 2019. And the numbers, if you look at the 2019 map, a little different, as some of the properties that were in the tax incentive open space have come off, but the town has acquired additional property. So some of those numbers are a little different, and some have gone up, some have gone down. Another, what I'll call a metric or sort of a statistical from a relationship standpoint, using a resource like National Recreation and Parks Association, they have several what I'll call metrics or sort of standards for parkland. In 2022, the metric was the recommendation is 1,000 per 1,000 residents is around 9.9 acres. If you use that number from the previous or the earlier slide of 45,000 population, comes out to be roughly around 445 acres of suggested parkland. Currently, again, town has right around 1,106 acres of parkland open space. This just shows that the town has done a very good job in the past acquiring property when it becomes available. The 1,100 acres, again, as you look at sort of the metric from an NRPA standpoint, while the 9.9 acres, per 1,000 is a recommendation based on community needs and community sort of attributes, those numbers can be adjusted accordingly. So from a timeline standpoint, kind of where we're at and how we sort of got to this point. So back in June of 2021, the town sort of put together the two groups that were out there that were looking at open space, which is this is listed as the ad hoc open space group and the Friends of Webster Trail. Both had very similar interest in finding and identifying open space properties within Webster. So that started in June of 2021. After that initial sort of get to know you meeting and try to find out from a interest level where the groups were, that resulted in the town mailing out. There was around 84 parcels that were identified, totaling just about 2,300 acres. All of these parcels received a letter from the town, basically just introducing the concept of, the town looking into this open space piece or program, and just trying to gauge some initial interest. So that was, again, summer of 21. Basically, from September, after that letter was mailed out, through January of this past year, the groups spent a lot of time following up, reaching out, contacting landowners, et cetera. As a result of that, this past February, the result was really about 21 properties that were not interested as a result of that contact, 30 that still there was no interaction or contact, and then around 30 properties that had some possible interest. That segued into earlier this spring, where there were door-to-door visits of those no-contact properties. Many of those were done by the supervisor, where it was actually, a door-to-door type of a situation where spoke to either the landowner or left information for contact. And that has resulted or brought us to really kind of an April, May timeframe, where there's now been an identified list of properties of about 23 properties that would be desirable for this ad hoc and Friends of Webster Trails property. That total is around, I believe it's around 650 acres or so. So obviously brings you to the question of what's next and sort of what's the, what do you do with this information? As the data was collected, this info is all, I'll say, the type of information that from a next step of the comprehensive plan that I know this town board has been aware of that needs to be updated. This is the type of information that will be useful as that plan sort of comes together and becomes part of this community. So that the information that has been done by this group, which has been, again, very significant, the number of meetings and the number of contact and I'll say reach outs that have been done over the, again, 11 months has been, again, significant and impressive. There's been a lot of work that's been put in by these two groups especially that have really, I'll say, started that process. And as the town goes into the comp plan, it only makes sense that the two are married together. Questions?
Jenny?
Well, I'm looking forward to see the new comprehensive plan. So, well, thank you so much, Chris, for a nice presentation.
Yeah, I have no questions. I just want to thank the groups that were involved in all of this, because I know we had a presentation early on when this first discussion began, and we were looking at we were mildly entertaining bringing in a consultant And the work that's been done so far, I think, would have cost the town, I don't remember the quote, but it was, I'm sure you do.
Well, and where Chris's presentation, the timeline started in June of '21. Actually, in February of 2021, the consultant presentation, it started at $250,000.
Right.
And one of the concerns that the board had through the Q&A from that presentation is that the town would have to spend $250,000 to get to referendum, and that wouldn't guarantee that obviously the referendum vote by the citizens would be a thumbs up.
Right.
And that was just a tough bill to consider on the if come. And so what was great is that the three entities, the Ad hoc Green Space Committee, the Friends of Webster Trails, and Chris at the town, and myself at the town, Matt representing really the town through WEDA, we were able to do a lot of that work. And it's interesting because, and of course, I've self-admittedly, I like going door to door. I don't know what that says about me, Charlie, but I get invited in for coffee. Sometimes later at night, I get invited in for things that aren't coffee.
Iced tea.
Iced tea, thank you. But to me, and I'm a data guy, what was really beneficial to the process of going door to door back in March was that we had some records of who owned these 10, 12, 20, 30 acre parcels, where it was, John Smith. But when I knocked on the door, John Smith had passed away a couple years ago. So now I'm talking to John Smith's widow, inviting me in for coffee and explaining how, the rawness of the death of his or her spouse, the adult kids, the land is kind of like representative of their father or mother. And so they weren't ready to give up that land. But I really felt as though those interactions with those people, if we continue to keep a relationship with them, there may come a point in the next year, 2, 3, where they are ready and they'll see the town in a good light. I'd like to think, unless I made a buffoon of myself, Charlie, which is possible. And I will say that, and I can't thank this town board enough, that 2 weeks ago we sat here and Josh Artuzo, our Director of Community Development, put on a PowerPoint presentation that was the work of a lot of people. Matt, you assisted on this, and it was really just to show the need for updating the comprehensive plan. And I think the town board, and you go back to tapes of that, said, let's go. And so we have taken the lead from the town board on that, and we're moving forward with updating that 2008 comprehensive plan. And some of the subcommittees and the efforts of that will go into it will be starting from a standstill. I have a meeting tomorrow with climate, green energy, whatever people, starting from a standstill. Open space will not be starting from a standstill. We are a year and a half ahead of the process because of these efforts. And that's really going to be helpful. And I can't wait, whether, Chris, we can put something in the July Webster Today that starts the public engagement of what's important to the public via surveys within the comprehensive plan update, which is such a big part of the comprehensive plan update, to get the 46,000 citizens, as many of them as possible to interact with us and tell us what is important. I would like to think that the 46,000, when, if we get large enough sample for them, we'll see open space preservation as being an important thing. So I'm interested in starting that engagement. And we talked about this 2 weeks ago, is that, and I'm not going to try again, Bill. I said third time's a charm. You've already told me now twice you're not going to do, you did the comprehensive plan twice before. If you see Bill's only 27 years old, so look what it did to him. But
It did cause me to lose my hair. I
Well,
will tell you that.
But, you know, Bill, it
Makes
really,
two of us.
if you think about it, the technology that we have available now to get interaction with the community is so different and advanced than it was, 15 years ago and the previous one back in 2000, that I'm just really excited to get that interaction with the community so the community can tell us, what is the most important things. So we can get that comprehensive plan for 2023 or 24 to match what the community today is looking for, today and for the next 20 years. So that's all I got.
Could I say something? Because I've been around
Charlie,
for,
you
for
gotta
a while.
let it
and
rip.
Myself and Bill Abbott, and I think both of us have seen the different approaches, which I think at the time that they were enacted, and at the time the particular supervisors, being Supervisor Thomas and Supervisor Nesbeth, and now Supervisor Flaherty, and the various town board members, have acted with creativity and determination and really getting ahead and in front of open space. This effort goes back, Bill, or at least a couple of decades. Kathy Thomas started it. She had some ideas which have played out. Ron Nesbitt continued that and some great purchases and great ideas. And this administration is doing likewise. I think that the people of the town are very, very well served. I'm only saying this because I've seen it all, and I'm very, very impressed with how everybody has worked on this and how they've looked at it continually with new eyes and in getting public input, but also looking at it from every point of view, from the rights of the citizens and the expenditures and also the benefit of the entire community. So good job to everybody, and this goes back to everybody who's been involved in the last 20 years for this open space program and the various programs that the town has entered into.
Charlie, you know what I was, and I have found the last 2.5 years to be, it's like my learning curve. Every day I'm learning something new, and from what I've been told, you could be in this position for 15 years. You continue to learn something new every day. But I was not aware that the last referendum, which was first pitched, if you want to say pitched in '03, was really Kathy Thomas's administration was pushing for that referendum to governor, so to speak, to slow down development. Because from 90, and Bill, you're shaking your head, yes, so you know that the amount of development that was going on from 90 to 2000, which is referenced in your growth chart there, was outpacing the town's ability to really manage it from a government standpoint, from an infrastructure, roads, all that. And what a great creative way to say, here's a way we can slow down development, is put out a referendum, and I think it was to buy 3,000 acres for $21 million, and that didn't pass. And politics might have come into it. I heard there was a late rush of door stuffers and whatever from the developers, because the developers got concerned that, well, holy cow, we're going to lose out on all this space. And, but it didn't pass. And it was tweaked and came back 2 years later in '05 as 1,000 acres approximately, not 3,000 acres, and it passed. So that was a good way to, and what I was surprised about, it was a town-led, Kathy Thomas administration-led.
The town can't obviously promote a position during the referendum, which they didn't, but the town got out in front of it and said, we think this is a good idea, we're your government, we're your representatives, and we're going to do all the work, then we're going to present it to you, you decide, it's your call, and that's what they did. But again, I think to me, the most impressive thing is how they got out in front of it. And there was always, in every administration, including yours, there's always been this thought process of how can we make it better, how can we continue it, so.
It's interesting, you can't, when you think about development or open space, I mean, the one thing that I've kind of learned that everybody that lives in Webster, man, woman, child's, would all agree is that they don't want to see this town become 70,000 people. And, you know, when you look at it that way, taking lands that could be developed for housing and whatever and getting them off the market to be forever open space is definitely a way to reduce population or population growth. The reality is, in this fluid world that we're in, the inflation that we're going through right now, we talk to developers every single day, and they're really kind of not moving forward with certain projects because the costs are just so prohibitive. So we might have a bit of a governor in the next year or so on development just from that. I mean, and I guess, is that a silver lining to the highest inflation in 45 years?
No,
Yeah, I can't even put a positive spin on that one, Bill.
no.
No.
But, I don't know. Anything else? Chris, thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
Yes, thank you.
Well, that concludes our meeting for the night. Thank you, everybody that came. By the way, how many of the library board was here? That's pretty good representation. He did a really good job, didn't he? Yeah, kid sharp. Ooh,
Yeah.
Called him a kid. Oh, yeah.
You're all kids.
He's kind of a kid, right? I mean, thanks again, gang.